Before we even talk about markets, a massive winter storm is about to roll across a huge chunk of farm country, bringing heavy snow, ice, and strong winds. On the board, corn finally ticks higher, soybeans are still soft, wheat bounces, cattle stay choppy, and crude oil pulls back hard. With this storm coming, that combination matters more than most people realize. Let's get you caught up on what closed, what changed, and what it means heading into tomorrow. Good morning, welcome to Boots and Bushels, your daily look at the markets that feed America. Whether you're pouring that first cup of coffee, heading out to feed, or already rolling down the road, thank you for spending your morning with me. Let's start with where the markets closed today. Corn finally managed a small bounce. The March contract closed at 4.24, up 2.25 cents on the day. It's not a breakout, but after the grind lower we've been in, even a modest uptick matters. This still feels like a market that's trying to build a floor. Big supplies are still hanging over it, but the longer corn holds above that $4 handle, the more it starts to stabilize planting expectations. Soybeans stayed under pressure. March beans settled at 10.64, down half cent. Meal was the bright spot again, closing at 296.20, up $4.80, while soybean oil slid to 53.78, down 23 points. That split tells you demand inside the complex is still uneven. Crushers are doing okay, export demand is still choppy, and traders aren't seeing a clean bullish signal yet. Wheat bounced back. Chicago March wheat closed at 515.5, up 7.75 cents. That's a relief rally after a rough stretch. It doesn't fix the bigger supply story, but it does show buyers stepping back in at lower levels. With winter wheat areas about to get a big moisture boost from this storm, weather could start to matter more for wheat than it has in the last few weeks. Cattle stayed choppy. February live cattle closed at 232.37, down 72 cents. March feeder cattle closed at 359.27, down 10 cents. Tight cattle numbers are still the long-term bullish story, but futures keep struggling to push higher because beef prices are already high and consumers are starting to push back. Hogs caught a bounce. February hogs closed at 88.47, up 62 cents. That's a small positive step after a soft stretch. Hog markets are still dealing with weak packer margins and uneven pork demand, but this does show the market trying to stabilize. Class 3 milk took a hit. February milk settled at $15, down 31 cents. That's a reminder that dairy is still grinding through a tough margin environment. Crude oil pulled back hard. March WTI closed at $59.36 a barrel, down $1.26. That's a sharp reversal after a recent run higher. On one hand, lower crude takes some pressure off diesel and fertilizer cost. On the other hand, with a major winter storm about to disrupt freight and travel, energy markets could get jumpy again fast. This is the big story. A massive winter storm is set to sweep across a wide stretch of farm country starting later tonight and intensifying tomorrow. The heavy snow zone, central and western Nebraska, eastern Wyoming, much of South Dakota, southern Minnesota, northern Iowa, and central Wisconsin are all in the core of this system. Forecasts are calling for widespread snow totals of 8 to 14 inches, with localized mounts over 18 inches possible, especially across parts of South Dakota, southern Minnesota, and central Wisconsin. Strong winds will create blowing and drifting snow, and whiteout conditions are likely at times. Ice and mixed precipitation zone. A dangerous icing band is expected from eastern Kansas and central Missouri through southern Illinois, southern Indiana, and into Ohio. Some of these areas could see a quarter inch to over a half inch of ice accumulation. That's enough to bring down power lines, tree limbs, and make roads nearly impassable. This is the zone where livestock operations, rural power, and feed access could be hit the hardest. Northern Plains and upper Midwest impacts. North Dakota and northern Minnesota will stay mostly snow, but even lighter totals there will combine with wind to create brutal travel conditions and extreme cold stress on livestock. Snow and ice begin late tonight in the plains, spread east through tomorrow, and continue into tomorrow night across the Midwest and Great Lakes. The worst travel conditions are expected from tomorrow morning through tomorrow evening. This is not just a plow it and move on storm. Delayed livestock hauling, feed delivery disruptions, rail slowdowns, and trucking shutdowns are likely. If you've got cattle, hogs, or dairy animals exposed to the wind and drifting snow, shelter, bedding, and access to water are going to be critical. From a grain standpoint, storms like this can tighten local cash markets fast. Ethanol plants, river terminals, and feed mills can see delivery delays, and basis levels can jump in isolated areas even if futures don't move. There's a long-term upside here too. A deep snowpack across the plains and upper Midwest is a positive moisture signal for winter wheat and spring planting soil profiles. So while the short-term disruptions are very real, the moisture benefit matters heading into spring. Bottom line, this is a major winter storm with both heavy snow and damaging ice, and it's going to impact operations, transportation, power, and livestock management across a big part of the country. Now, that's what the weather stations are calling for, all the meteorologists. Some of them are also calling for up to 2 inches of ice in northern Texas, parts of Arkansas, Tennessee, pretty much through all those areas. Starting in northern Arkansas and through middle Missouri, we're looking at maybe 18 inches of snow. So it's kind of all over the place. We don't know yet. But this is just what I'm getting. Anyway, on the ag news. First, grain markets are still digesting a heavy global supply picture. New international production updates show corn and wheat output finishing slightly higher than last year. That's part of why rallies keep running into selling pressure. There's just no urgency right now for buyers to chase prices higher, especially with South American harvest activity ramping up and export competition staying aggressive. Second, cattle producers are continuing to deal with tight supplies and strong cash markets, even as futures struggle to break out. Beef demand is holding up better than expected given high prices, but retailers are starting to push back. That tension between supply and consumer demand is going to be a big story as we move into spring, especially if consumer spending starts to slow. Energy markets are back in focus again after today's sell-off. Crude oil's sharp drop is being driven by profit-taking and macro uncertainty. For agriculture, that pullback could ease some near-term input cost pressure, but volatility in energy markets is still something producers need to keep watching closely. And this ties directly into today's weather story. This winter storm is already starting to disrupt grain movement and livestock logistics in parts of the plains and Midwest. Trucking delays, rail slowdowns, feed deliveries, and livestock hauling cancellations could tighten up short-term supplies in localized areas. When storms like this hit, cash markets can move fast, even if futures don't. And the fifth story, there's growing attention on U.S. export competitiveness. Fifth, there's growing attention on U.S. export competitiveness, especially for corn and soybeans. With the dollar staying relatively firm and South American supplies coming online, U.S. exports are facing stiffer competition in key global markets. That doesn't mean exports fall off a cliff, but it does mean demand may stay choppy and price rallies could keep getting capped unless there's a surprise shift in global buying patterns. So the big picture today looks like this. Corn finally ticked higher. Soybeans are still soft. Wheat bounced. Cattle stayed choppy. Hogs caught a small bounce. Dairy slipped. Crude oil pulled back hard. And a major winter storm with heavy snow and damaging ice is about to disrupt a lot of operations across the country. That's today's Boots and Bushels, your daily look at the markets that feed America. We'll be back here Monday morning with the latest settlements, storm impacts, and ag news. Thanks again for spending your morning with me.